How's it going, everyone? I am back with another video. This is going to be my Week 7 score predictions video. I'm going to go through all the NFL games that are going to take place this week, or this weekend, rather, and the two Monday night games, of course. Thank God it's the last time there's a Monday night doubleheader. Can't stand when that happens. I'm going to break down my score predictions for all the games, how I think the game's going to go. And yeah, all that good stuff. So I'll just dive straight in here. If I can advance my slides, there we go. So obviously the first game was the Thursday game. As I'm recording this, it's Friday afternoon. So obviously this game took place last night. I will recap this game in my Week 7 recap video. So I won't talk about this game too much, but I got the pick right, but the score was obviously a bit off. It was a complete shootout. Neither defense could stop a nosebleed that game. The Yunk Bowl, Rodgers and Flacco lighting it up at 41 and 40, so that was insane. That was the Bengals. That would have been an absolute killer if they had lost this game. Scored 20 unanswered. Feels like they have all the momentum. The Steelers go right down the field, score. And then as soon as the Bengals got the field goal, I'm like, yep, the Steelers going to win 31-30, just like Kirk Herbstreit was saying in the commentary booth. But at the end of the game, Joe Flacco clutch drive. He was awesome this game. So again, I won't talk too much about this game. At least I got not the score prediction right. At least I got the pick right with the Bengals. Really entertaining game. Again, bit off of the score, but at least I got the pick right there. Rams Jaguars. This is going to be the London game. I believe there's one more after this. I can't remember what the matchup is off the top of my head, but I'm actually I was going to say it's next week. I'm not 100% sure on that. I think there might be a bit of a break before the next one. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, this is a tough one to pick. Originally, I was leaning Jaguars, and I kind of was back and forth on it the whole week, and then I flipped kind of at the last second. I was just thinking about it more and more. The good thing for the Jaguars is, well, technically, whatever team in the international games gets technically, the home field, they get it designated to be a home game, kind of gets shafted, right? Because obviously it's a neutral field. Um, you don't typically have the same home field advantages you would, at your usual home stadium or home field. But the Jaguars, it's not really the case because they're kind of their second home is kind of like London. They're there every year for the international game. They usually play well. They usually win most of their games. Off the top of my head, I feel like they usually play extremely well there too. At least from what I can remember off the top of my head. I remember they played the Ravens in the 2017 season. It was week 3, and I think everyone was kind of picking the Ravens. And I remember I was at the Patriots Texans game. It was Deshaun Watson, his second game as a starter, as a rookie. And I was in the Optimum Zone. My dad and we were there, of course, before the game started. Like, I don't know, an hour, half hour before the game started, they had the game on the TV because it was, the London game, so it was being played earlier than a game normally is, like at 1, at least on the the East Coast. And I remember the Jaguars just absolutely demolished the Ravens. It was like, Jesus. They beat the Bills a couple of years ago. That was a good win for them. They beat Speaking of the Patriots, they beat my team last year. That was a really frustrating game to watch. We could not stop the run to save our lives that game. But anyway, I'm getting off topic a bit here. My point is the Jaguars play well in London. It's kind of like their second home. So that kind of favors the Jaguars alone. For me, I just kind of think like the Jaguars are coming back down to earth a little bit. They were 4-1, and their defense was forcing turnovers at a ridiculous rate. And the thing was, their opponents were moving the ball on them, but their defense kept forcing turnovers. And it's like, how long are they going to be able to keep this up? Like, how sustainable is forcing these timely turnovers? And we saw last week they didn't turn it over, and even though the Seahawks, rather, their opponent didn't turn it over, and even though they only scored 20, and their defense actually played a decent, solid game, I would say, they ended up losing. I'm not saying that if their defense doesn't force a turnover in any game the rest of the season, they're going to lose. But I think their defense is kind of coming back down to earth, at least in terms of, forcing turnovers at the rate they were. Their offense kind of looked bad last week, the Jaguars, and the Rams get a really, really solid, well-coached defense. I think they play a good game in this one. Puka being out obviously is a bit of a boost for the Jaguars. But I think Adams, picks up the slack there. He is a big game in this one. I just trust the Rams a bit more. I think the Jaguars will be a good team the rest of the year, but I think they're kind of coming back down to earth, with their defense forcing as many turnovers. That was a large part of why they started 4-1. Probably should have been 5-0, but if they didn't blow that game against the Bengals week 2. But I think they're kind of coming back down to earth a little. I by no means do I think they'll be, a bad team at all this season. I think they'll probably contend for a playoff spot, probably finish around 500, like a game below, a game or two above, somewhere around there. I just trust the Rams a bit more, even without Puka in this game. It's kind of what my guts tell me. They're favorite. I honestly thought the Jaguars might be favored by like 1.5. The line surprised me a little bit here. West Coast team going out to London. That's a bit eerie picking the Rams here, but I'm gonna roll with the Rams. I just trust them a bit more in this one. If the Jaguars do win this game, obviously the story I just outlined about their defense forcing a million turnovers, that would help. But I do think their defense could play a really solid game, hold the Rams to around. Well, I had them holding them to 24. That's a decent game. But if they hold them to 20, I think they get a good chance to win. I just think the Rams defense is going to give the Jaguars offense some issues. But if the Jags offense kind of overperforms, puts around up 27 on the board, they could steal this one. I don't even want to say steal because it's kind of a coin flip game for me, honestly. I just trust the Rams a bit more. I think Stafford and company will just do enough to get the job done in comparison to Trevor Lawrence and company there. Could go either way, but I'm going to slightly lean the Rams in this one. I'm going to pick LA to take this one 24-20. Next game, Patriots-Titans. I'm going to roll with my team, of course. The score, I'm pretty confident. I would be surprised if we lost this game. The one thing that I'm a bit concerned about is the Titans obviously fired Callahan, and Mike McCoy is now the interim head coach. Obviously, when he was with the Chargers, back in the day, it really did not work out too well for him. I think off the top of my head, he finished above 500 twice, like 9-7, I want to say. And then, I want to say 3 more years there, it was not too good for the Chargers with him. But hey, a lot of times passed since then. We'll have to see how he is. This Titans team, even though they're a disaster, I'm not saying Mike McCoy is going to, turn this Titans team around. I still think the Titans will be competing for the first overall pick. But when we see a team fire a bad coach that kind of, lost the locker room, like I think was the case with Brian Callahan, it feels like the players kind of get a sense of relief. It's just kind of a breath of fresh air. And they kind of just come out energized. They play better than we have been seeing them, what we're used to seeing them. That sometimes happens with an interim head coach. So I'm a bit concerned that's going to happen here, especially at home. Obviously, the crowd will, I'm sure, give the Titans a bit of a boost there. But I'm not too concerned as far as this matchup. The only thing that's kind of the only thing I'm concerned about. I will say if the Titans do pull off this upset, I think it's going to be because their defense could play a solid game in this one. We could, they could hold us to around like 20-ish, somewhere around there. The offense of the Titans will have to do a bit more than I'm expecting. So Titans kind of keep it low scoring. That could be how they steal this game. But speaking of defense, I think our defense is going to play a really good game in this one. The Titans offense has not been very good. Actually, they've been worse since Callahan gave up play calling to Hargrave there. They've been worse. Our defense is playing better and better every week, even though it was a bit concerning last week against the Saints. I think we get that cleaned up. Our run defense has been fantastic. The Titans really have struggled to run the ball anyway, so if we force them to be one-dimensional, that'll help on our end. I think our offense is a good game, but I don't think we light it up and score 30 plus. You know, like last week, Drake May's throwing 50-yard bombs that the referees are overturning. Don't even get me started on that game. I already ranted on that twice in my videos that I uploaded yesterday. But I do think our offense will probably have, a couple rough drives. We'll probably, have to punt it a few times. But I think overall, we put up a decent amount of points. Putting up 27 is what I have as scoring here. So I think our offense gets the job done. I just think we're the better team. We're more well coached. I just have a tough time seeing us losing this game. Mike Vrabel revenge game. Obviously, I'm sure he's going to be, obviously he's not going to say it publicly, and he's been asked 100 times by the media and the radio show people about it, and he's just kind of downplayed it. But I'm sure, he's got an initiative to, really probably try to blow the doors off this team as a nice fu to, firing him 2 years ago. But yeah, we're favored by 7. That's a rather large spread on the on the road. Pause. I don't know. I don't know why to use that phrasing, but that's okay. I honestly think we'll end up covering that spread, though. I'm probably going to bet us -7. I could see the Titans putting up a bit more points. Maybe they just get a random burst of offense again. The only thing that concerns me in this matchup is the interim head coach boost that teams sometimes get. But yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with my team. I think we take care of business, beat a really bad, just mess of a Titans team right now. I wish it was Callahan still coaching, so I would have been even more confident because Callahan's just an absolute joke of a head coach, I think. But I'm going to roll with my team to get the job done. Hopefully get the dub, go 5-2. Hopefully we can finally win a game where I don't have a heart attack. Well, I guess the Panthers game, but the rest of them I've had heart attacks every week. Hopefully we can get a nice, kind of controlling win here. I don't think we'll win like 27-3 or anything like that, but 2-score win. We're up 2 scores most of the game where I don't have to constantly have a heart attack throughout the whole game would be nice. But anyway, I'm going to pick my team to get the job done, get the dub in Tennessee, 27-16. Oh, boy. Raiders, Chiefs. Yeah. Good luck, Raiders. That's all I have to say here. The Chiefs are favored by 11.5. I think they'll cover that. I don't know if I'll bet it, but usually I like to stay away from spreads that big. But the Chiefs, I have them covering it. I think they probably will. This is just not a good matchup for the Raiders at the moment. The Chiefs obviously getting their offense back in business. It's looked very good the past 3 weeks. Now they're getting Rice back. So that's going to be even obviously more difficult for the Raiders to contain. I think the Chiefs offense is a really good game in this one. And, the Raiders offense has kind of been a mess most of the season. Geno has been a disaster for most of the year. He's turning it over at a crazy rate. You have, I was saying about the Jaguars forcing so many turnovers. If Geno Smith played that Jags defense, they probably would have about 15 interceptions off of him alone. But yeah, Raiders, this is just a tough draw for them at the moment. If this was in Vegas, I actually think they would have a decent, maybe not a decent, but a slim chance. It's any given week, any team can have a chance to win a game. But the Raiders, this is just a really tough draw for them. I just really have a hard time seeing them winning this game. I guess if they do win the game, Patrick Graham's kind of had success with the Raiders against the Chiefs offense in the past couple seasons. So maybe that'll be, a key if they can pull off this major upset. Their defense kind of limits the Chiefs a bit, forces some turnovers. Besides that, that's really the only realistic path I see them winning this game. Maybe, if Geno doesn't turn it over, obviously that'd help. Maybe Genty pops off, but Chiefs defense playing better and better every week, it feels like, going against a very much struggling Raiders offense with a struggling quarterback. I just have a hard time seeing the Raiders winning this game. I think the Chiefs will jump out to an early lead, just honestly kind of blow the doors open. Then the Raiders, they'll probably score late, make it a bit more respectable is how I see the game going. Yeah. obviously I'll be pulling for the Raiders as a Chiefs hater, but just have a hard time seeing it happen. I'm going to roll the Chiefs to win this game. Could even see them putting up more than 30, but I think the Raiders defense will get at least a couple stops, maybe force them to some field goals. So I'm going to roll with Kansas City to take care of business at home, get the divisional dub 30-14 in this one. Eagles Vikings. This is an interesting matchup. This is a hard one to pick. Both of these teams have kind of been underwhelming this season, you can say. Now, the Eagles, they started out 4-0, but the talk about them was, well, how long are they going to be able to sustain this? They're winning, but it's in unsustainable ways. The offense is, it has streaks where it looks good, then it does nothing. It's really ugly. They just hold on by the skin of their teeth to win every game. How long is that going to be sustainable? Now they've lost 2 in a row. It's like the walls are closing in on them. And then the Vikings, they've been extremely banged up. Their line, their defense. Carson Wentz, they just signed him and they threw him in there right against the Bengals. Obviously, it worked out phenomenal in that game. But then, against the Steelers, it was bad. And then the Browns, it was sort of bad for a while. They obviously got the job done. So they're only 3-2. The Eagles are 4-2. But I don't know. The way the Eagles offense is playing, I just do not like how they match up at the moment with the Vikings defense, which speaking of up and down, the Vikings defense, it looks great one game, then bad the next. Like the Steelers game, I thought they were going to play really well, and they really had a tough time in that one. I thought maybe the Bengals, even though Jake Browning was in there, maybe they could get a decent amount of offense. Nope, that didn't happen. The Vikings defense, specifically Isaiah Rodgers, that game played absolutely phenomenal. Isaiah Rodgers that game had one of the greatest single defensive performances in NFL history. It was all in the first half. But yeah, the Brian Flores, obviously one of the best defensive coaches in the league, going up against this Eagles offense that is very much struggling. And specifically, I guess the Rams game would be an exception. When the Eagles offense has to adjust this season with Kevin Patullo calling the plays, it really seems like they have a difficult time doing so. Brian Flores, on the other hand, is really good at adjusting on the fly. So that matchup alone fares with the Vikings. Also, the Eagles, feast and man coverage a lot of the time because of, Brown and Smith and Saquon. The Vikings really have not been running a lot of man. I saw a stat that it's been a lot of zone. That's, the Eagles have been struggling with zone, so that's another thing. Yeah, I'm going to slightly roll the Vikings here. I guess it's a Carson Wentz revenge game. Obviously, it's with the Eagles when he first started his career. Obviously, didn't work out there. But yeah, I think the Vikings offense, they do just enough. Also, that's another thing. The Eagles are banged up defensively. Their corners are struggling to defend the Giants receivers, and the Giants had to call up practice squad guys in the Thursday night game, and they're moving up and down the field at will. Well, if they can't cover them, how the hell are they going to cover Addison and Jefferson and the weapons, the Viking Hawkinson? How the hell are they going to cover all those guys? So that's another thing that sides of the Vikings in this matchup. I'm honestly a bit surprised the Eagles are favored by 1.5. I'm technically going with the underdog in the Vikings here. I just think their defense is going to be what wins in the game. I think their offense, I could see a scenario where they really have a good game. They put up maybe like 30 plus, but I think the Eagles defense doesn't play as bad as it did last week, and they, tighten some things up. They contain Wentz, a decent amount this game. I think the Eagles defense keeps them in it, but I really just have a tough time seeing their offense win the game for them. If that's what it comes down to. Honestly, having them at 20, I'm even a bit hesitant on. I almost at 17, but I feel like that's too low. Because again, the Eagles, they have drives, so they move the ball fine this season. And then some drives, and more often than not this season, their offense has stalled out and it's just looked awful. So a lot for me, at least in the way I'm processing and thinking about this game, a lot sides with the Vikings. But the Eagles, of course, they very well could win the game. Like I said, I think their defense will do decent enough. I think they'll play well enough to win the game. For me, it's just the offense. If the offense can put up, 23, 24 points, I think they have a really good shot of winning the game. If they just have to avoid those long droughts that they've been getting stuck in. for large portions of games this season. So if they can do that, that's their key to winning the game. But Brian Flores against Kevin Patullo, I think that is going to be what wins the Vikings this game, as well as the injuries the Eagles are dealing with defensively and the poor corner play. I think the Vikings take advantage of. So I'm gonna roll the Vikings in the upset here, 23-20. As far as the spread, I certainly wouldn't bet it for the Eagles. I probably wouldn't bet it for the Vikings either, honestly, because I think it's a borderline coin flip. Even though I could see the Vikings again winning comfortably, and the story coming out of the game would be like, all right, the Eagles 3 in a row now, another bad loss. The walls are really closing in. Some more AJ Brown speculation is he's going to get traded. So I don't know. I'm going to roll with the Vikings 23-20. Could go either way, but I'm going to roll with Minnesota in this one. Carolina and the Jets. This is a trap game for the Panthers, which the line suggests that too, because the Panthers are by no means a juggernaut, but they're playing pretty solid football right now. Ever since they started 0, really ever since the fourth quarter of that Arizona game week 2, they're playing really solid football right now, with the exception of, not to brag, not to toot my own horn, but my team, the Patriots, demolishing them in week 4. Besides that, they're playing good ball. They've won 2 in a row, came back down from 17-0 against the Dolphins, and they beat the Cowboys, who obviously their defense is a disaster, but even without Lamb, who's back this week, so that'll be a boost for the Cowboys. One of the higher powered offenses in the league. So two good wins for Carolina in a row here. The Dolphins are obviously a disaster. They're down 17-0. So again, two good wins for the Panthers back to back. They're back at 500. They're 3-3, and they're going up against the 0-6 Jets team. So you might just think, all right, well, obviously the Panthers are going to win. Well, yes, the Jets are 0-6, and they're a complete mess, and they just lost Garrett Wilson. But we saw their defense last week. It played a really solid game, even though I honestly think that was more of Sean Payton just calling a poor game. But still, the Jets defense played a good game. And the other thing is, the Panthers are a completely different team at home than on the road. At home, they've been an excellent team. Well, maybe not excellent, but they've been a really good. They were excellent against the Falcons, their home opener. But then, they're undefeated at home. They're 3-0 at home. Then they were good in the Dolphins and Cowboys game. On the road, they've been an absolute disaster outside of that outlier fourth quarter against the Cardinals. So Panthers, a disaster on the road against a desperate Jets team. I know the players aren't thinking this way, but at this point, they have nothing to lose. They're 0-6. I know mathematically, even Fields is like, well, keeping playoff hopes alive. Well, obviously, this team, barring a miracle, is not making the playoffs. So, desperate team, kind of playing with house money is the Jets mentality. Nothing to lose at this point, really. Aaron Glenn may be feeling the heat. Maybe he's a bit extra motivated. So this could easily be a Jets win. I could see a scenario, very realistic scenario, where the Jets win this game. If they do win the game, I think their defense has a really good performance. Panthers probably only score around 16, 17 points. I could see that. The thing for me, though, is the Jets offense. I just do not trust it at all this game. They're obviously a run-heavy offense, and the Panthers have been actually adjusting well in the middle of the season to stop the run well. And so obviously, if you stop the run, you have to pass. Well, who the hell is Justin Fields going to throw the ball to? Garrett Wilson's out, so who the hell is he going to throw the ball to? So the Panthers defense, I think they're going to play a solid game in this one, limit the Jets for most of the game. I think this will be close. I could see a weird scenario where the Jets kind of win comfortably and it's a bit of a surprise. I could see the Panthers winning comfortably, but I think regardless of which team wins, it will be a close game. I have a 6-point game here. I mean, technically, the Panthers to cover the spread just have to win by 2 or more. So, I mean, if you're confident with the Panthers, that's a pretty safe bet to just bet their spread, get a bit better odds than their money line. But Jets very well could win the game if their defense plays well. Maybe they get the run game going a bit. Fields kills the Panthers scrambling. That could be their key to victory. But I'm going to roll with the Panthers here, playing good football. I just trust them more. I'll roll with Carolina to take this one 24-18. New Orleans and Chicago. This will be an interesting game. if this was in New Orleans, I probably would be taking the Bears still, but it would be a lot harder for me to pick. I'm gonna roll with Chicago at home. They're getting hot. They've won 3 in a row. Obviously, they had the bye in between. Their well, they won 2 in a row. Then they had the bye. Then they beat the Commanders. Obviously, so they've won 3 in a row. The bye week in the middle of that streak. But yeah, going against the Saints team, who again they're only 1-5, but they're a scrappy 1-5 team. They're playing better than people thought this season. Most people thought, at least. The Saints, I wouldn't be shocked if they won this game, but the Bears are getting hot. They're the much better team. Their defense, kind of like the Jaguars, you can move the ball on it, but they're forcing a bunch of turnovers. But even this game, I don't even think they're going to have to force too many turnovers, even though Rattler is playing kind of under the radar. Now he's getting some attention, but kind of under the radar pretty well this season. I think the Bears, even without the turnovers, can fairly limit the Saints offense. And the Bears offense, I just simply trust it to score more than the Saints offense, especially being at home in Chicago. The Bears defense, I could see a scenario where they really play well and really limit the Saints. The Saints only score like 14 points, 16 points, somewhere around there. But I think New Orleans will get a decent amount of offense in this one. But like I said, I just trust the Bears offense more than the Saints offense. And I think I trust the Bears defense more than the Saints defense. I trust Ben Johnson to outcoach Brandon Staley in this game. Bears, obviously Ben, well, the head coach, but calls the offensive plays. Obviously Brandon Staley, the Saints defensive coordinator, so that's the matchup there. I trust Ben Johnson to outdo Brandon Staley here. If the Saints do win this game, I honestly will be a bit surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked. Calvin Ridley ruled out. Well, that's going to be a boost for my team. He might be traded. My God. If he gets traded, poor Cam Ward's going to have no one to throw to. Jesus Christ. Anyway, if the Saints do somehow win this game, maybe their offense just gets a random burst. They avoid turnovers. I think they'll probably have to put up at minimum 24 to 27, 28 points, get the job done. Decent chance of that happening. Decent chance of them winning the game if they can put up that many points. Their defense, I think, is going to have to just overperform how I'm expecting them to. Maybe force some turnovers. But yeah, I'm pretty confident with the Bears to win the game. I'm probably going to avoid the spread, but they very well could cover the spread. I don't have them doing so. I only have them winning by 4. They're 4.5 point favorites. They very well could cover the spread, but I'm going to avoid it, I think. But I'll probably just bet Bears money line straight up. Obviously less or lesser odds, but I think the risk is just a bit too much for me as far as the spread. The Bears very well could, win comfortably. But anyway, I'm going to roll the Bears to win the game 27-23 in this one. Miami and Cleveland. I'm actually oddly confident the Browns are going to win this game. They're favored by 2.5 points. If I had to take a guess, this is probably going to be the only game the Browns are favored in this entire season. I don't know who they play, week in and week out. I don't have their whole schedule memorized, but I can't imagine they'll be favored in another game, barring, the team is facing like significant injuries that they're playing against or something like that. But I just like the way the Browns match up against the Dolphins. Even before I saw the report yesterday that there was supposed to be like really high wins in this game, even before that, my logic was, all right, well, obviously the Browns get a really solid defense. I think they'll probably force Tua into maybe a turnover or two. I think they'll be able to contain the Dolphins' offense, pretty well this game. And I just kind of trust the run game to get going. That was kind of my logic. Now I think as long as Dillon Gabriel doesn't blow the game, I feel even more confident now that I just saw the report about the weather. It looks like if the winds are as bad as the report yesterday suggested, that the Browns are it's going to end the Dolphins. It's just going to be an extremely run-heavy game, and I'm obviously trusting the Browns. Watch it. It's not like the Browns, rushing offense has been lighting it up, but we saw against the Vikings, a solid defense 2 weeks ago. They lit it up. Judkins went off. The Dolphins' run defense is absolutely terrible. So look for Judkins to pop off in this game. I think I'm probably gonna maybe just throw a player bet on him to go over a certain amount of rush yards, maybe get in the end zone. I think Judkins in the run game for Cleveland's going to be what wins them this game. I think the Browns defense, like I said, helps win the game. They maybe force Tua into a bad turnover or two, give the Dolphins some schemes that schematically don't favor Miami. If the Dolphins do win, I honestly, again, I'm like very strangely, oddly confident in the Browns, even though both teams are 1-5. If the Dolphins do win, I could see maybe Waddle having a big game, some deep shots. Maybe A-Chain, the speed hurts the Browns and their defense. Maybe getting sacks on early downs, it hurts the Browns. They force some punts. Maybe that could be the reason the Dolphins win the game. But I'm oddly confident in the Browns as long as Dillon Gabriel, like I said, doesn't blow the game, like he doesn't turn it over, he doesn't take bad sacks, things like that. I'm oddly confident in the Browns. If Dillon Gabriel, well, they've kind of just made him a game manager. If he just manages the game, just short passes, a couple solid, maybe intermediate throws on play action if they get the run game going. As long as he doesn't turn it over and just a game manager, I'm pretty confident with the Browns here. I'm honestly probably going to take them to cover the spread. It's probably going to bite me, 1-5 team to cover the spread, but I'm going to roll with the Browns here. I like the matchup for them. The weather even further makes me confident in this game that the Browns are going to win. So I'm going to roll with Cleveland to get this dub 24-17. The Giants and the Broncos. This is an interesting matchup. Obviously, the Giants are getting hot. They've won 2 or 3. They probably should be coming into this game winning 3 in a row if they didn't turn it over 5 times against the Saints. Dart is playing exceptionally well right now. The defense is playing a lot better. The vibes on the Giants are better. Scadaboo's getting it going. And they're playing a Broncos team that just had one of the ugliest wins I've seen in my entire life against a horrendous Jets team where their offense did absolutely nothing for pretty much the entirety of the game outside of like 3 drives. Their defense played phenomenal, but it was against a terrible Jets defense. So, you got to take that into account a little. But I think Denver, I think Sean Payton, I'm sure, reamed them out after how well. I think Sean Payton should ream himself out. I don't think he called a very good game either. But I think, Sean Payton is going to get the guys back on track this week. They're at home. And again, no disrespect to the Giants. They're playing a lot better, but the Broncos are a much better team, at least in my opinion. I think they're much better coached than the Giants as well. Maybe not by a wide margin, but I think, a decent margin. They're at home. I don't think the offense goes off and scores 30 plus. I think it'll be kind of like, most Denver games we've seen where at least, this season where the offense doesn't do too much. It looks good, then bad, then good. Oh, good drive, bad drive, and drive. I think it's one of those games, mixed offensive game, some ugly drives, some decent drives, some good drives. So I have them putting up 23. I'm honestly kind of comfortable. I think maybe at most they score 26-27, around there. I think the Giants defense plays a decent game. The Denver defense, I think, is going to play a really good game. I think that's going to be what wins them this one. Dart, I'm kind of just waiting for it to, be like, all right, and he's only played 3 games, but he's killing teams, scrambling, buying time. I think Denver is gonna put maybe not a stop to that, but they're going to severely limit Dart in that metric, and they're going to blitz the shit out of them. They're going to get some pass rush on them, force them into quick passes. I think they get a good amount of sacks. They pressure Dart a lot. He has to get the ball out quick. So that's why I'm going to pick Denver to win this game. In other words, I basically think Dart and the offense do not have a very good game. And Dart, everyone's like shocked how well he's playing. Maybe he doesn't have such a great game in this one. It's like, all right, well, maybe, he is a rookie. That might be the talk coming out of this game. Well, he's a rookie. He was kind of bound to have a slip up. Here it is. I think that might be the talk in this game. After the game, I mean. If the Giants do win, like I said, I do think their defense is going to play a decent enough game. Probably, I think their defense will play well enough for them to win the game. Their offense, I think, if Dart, I'm anticipating him not getting as much time to throw as he has been. If he can get the time to throw, as much time to throw as he has been the past couple games, that could be a key for them to win. Obviously, avoiding turnovers, that'd be a key. Avoiding sacks. So those will be some key to the Giants to win. I could see them winning the game. Denver is favored by 7. I technically have them covering, but I'm probably going to stay away from that myself because I think I could see a scenario where Denver only wins by like 3 field goals, something like that. If this was in New York, that would be really tempting to pick the Giants. But I'm going to roll Denver to win this one 23-16. Should be an interesting matchup, though. Colts Chargers. This is a tough one. I'm honestly shocked the Chargers are favored. They're favored by 1.5. I am actually, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna double check that because I had some formatting issues with this, and I had some teams being favored that weren't. So I'm gonna double check. Let me grab my phone real quick. Okay, let's see here. Okay, DraftKings. Let's see. Nope. Okay, let's see. NFL. Yeah, the Chargers are favored by 1.5. I'm honestly surprised at the line. I can't believe the Colts aren't favored in this game. The Chargers, since they started off 3-0, have really been struggling. Even last week, in a game that they should have comfortably won, they nearly blew it. Herbert and McConkey had to bail them out at the end of the game, and they won by the skin of their teeth. And then the Colts on the other end is absolutely humming. Their one loss was just from, honestly, I think they outplayed the Rams. They probably should have won that game. They just had some bad luck in that game with obviously the A.D. Mitchell, Deshaun Jacksoning the ball at the 1-yard line, and then the Jonathan Taylor touchdown getting overturned on a holding call also by A.D. Mitchell. So they honestly, you can make a strong argument they should be undefeated right now, and they're going against a Chargers team that's extremely banged up. They're struggling to protect Herbert. They don't have their top 2 running back. Their defense hasn't been playing too great. So I'm honestly surprised the Chargers are favored. And despite all that, I'm picking the Chargers. I was gonna say an upset, but technically they're favored, which I'm certainly staying away from this game. I think this is a coin flip game. If the Chargers do win, I think it's a close game. I really do not see them winning. Maybe at most they could win like 10-14 at the most. But I think it'll be a 1-score game. The Colts, I think, are the safer pick. I could very well see the Colts winning this game, fairly comfortably, and it being an ugly loss for the Chargers. For me, I'm just kind of waiting for the Chargers defense to get back in gear. I think this is going to be the game they do it. I'm also waiting for the Colts to have a slip up, and I think this is the game they do it. Maybe Jesse Minter, he cooks something up and forces Daniel Jones to kind of look like the Daniel Jones we're used to a bit. So there's that. That could help the Chargers win. Actually, the big factor in why I'm picking the Chargers is because the Colts are banged up at corner, and I think they're getting some guys back this game. And last week, Jacoby Brissett, and again, no disrespect to Jacoby Brissett, my old guy from the Patriots, but Jacoby Brissett and the struggling Cardinals offense were moving the ball at will, and they're throwing in the end zone for a chance to take the lead late. They would have put up 30 plus if they had scored at the end there. And the Chargers offense is better than the Cardinals offense. And we've seen Herbert, and obviously the pass attack it's a bit surprising how much they've attempted passes than running the ball this season, the Chargers, with Greg Roman and, Jim Harbaugh being run first coaches, especially Greg Roman. But the Chargers, even though they're not lighting it up offensively, we've seen that their line is extremely banged up. We've seen that their offense in the pass game can be very explosive. So if the Cardinals can do it, I think the Chargers can do it even worse to this Colts defense. That's the main reason I'm picking them. They're at home. I kind of think Jesse Minter and the defense get back on track. They play a really solid game. They tone down the Colts offense a bit more than what it's been producing this season. So that's why I'm picking the Chargers. The Colts, again, there's probably more logic that's just Indy should win this game than the Chargers. If Indy just keeps playing the way they've been playing, they should win the game. If the Chargers keep playing the way they've been playing, Indy should win the game. Um, I could see the Colts, Daniel Jones and company in the offense just simply producing at the level they have been. That could win them the game. Their defense, get some guys back. They play a bit better there than they did the last week. That could win them the game. Maybe Jonathan Taylor goes off. But I think Daniel Jones, I think he'll kind of have a similar performance to this one as he did in the Rams game, where he plays a solid game but makes some mistakes that hurt the team, and the Chargers end up capitalizing off of that. I just think that passing game wins the Chargers the game. So I'm technically not picking an upset, but it feels like I should be. I don't know. Again, I'm shocked that the Chargers are favored in this game. But I'm going to pick the Chargers to win this game, certainly staying away from it betting wise. I'm taking LA 27-24 here. Okay, let me take a quick sip of water. Okay. Green Bay and Arizona. And Jesus, my sticky pad just fell off my desk. Oopsies. Oh, whatever, I'll fix it after. Anyway, Green Bay and Arizona. Yeah, gonna go with the Packers here. I just do not like the vibes coming out of Arizona right now. It feels like Gannon, honestly, is about to be fired. I don't think they'll fire in the middle of the season, but who knows, honestly. It just feels like since DeMarcado fumbled that ball, they've been on a downward spiral. And, Gannon, hitting DeMarcado on the pads, that it just feels like since then they've been on a downward spiral. Even though they looked good against the Colts last week, they nearly, stole it. The Packers, even though they've been a bit weird since they started 2-0, I think this game they just kind of established that they're flat out the better team, and it's evident in the way this game plays out. I think the Packers jump out to an early lead. I don't think they light it up offensively. Arizona's got a really solid defense, so I think they'll be able to contain the Packers offense, at least for a majority of or maybe not a majority, but at least for a decent portion of the game. But the Packers putting up 26. I think they'll jump out to an early lead, kind of control it most of the game, and you kind of feel the whole game that the Packers are going to win. Arizona's offense, it looks like Murray's out again. Brissett last week, as I was just talking about with the Colts, he played surprisingly well. It was the best their offenses looked all year. I think they look kind of like the Cardinals' offense we've seen pretty much the whole year outside of that game. Brissett and the offense struggle. Packers defense plays a solid game. That's how I see this game going. And again, just not liking the vibes coming out of Arizona right now with the Cardinals. Packers are favored by 7. That's a big spread for a road team, and it's not like the Cardinals are a disastrous tanking team or anything, even though they're struggling. So that I don't know if I'm going to bet that line or not. That's risky. I might just do Packers money line. It's a much safer bet. Maybe Green Bay minus 3.5, 4.5, something like that. Yeah, if the Cardinals do win the game, I think their defense will be what wins them the game. I really have a tough time seeing their offense have a good game in this one. So their defense, I think, is going to have to really limit the Packers to like 20 points, something like that. The offense will just have to overperform how I'm expecting it to. Even though it could happen, I just have a hard time seeing the Cardinals winning this game. I'm going to pick Green Bay to win this game 26-17. And for Arizona, the walls will be closing in further and further after this one, I think. Commanders and Cowboys. This is a really tough one to predict. Now, I feel like the safer pick would honestly be the Commanders, and I was going to pick them originally, but then I'm like, do I really think they'll sweep Dallas? Because I assume they'll probably end up winning the game in Washington, and I'm like, I think the Cowboys will win it. The Cowboys also lost last week, so did the Commanders, but Lamb being back, even without Lamb, I might pick the Cowboys anyway. Obviously, with Lamb, I feel a bit better about this pick. But both defenses have been awful. Obviously, the Cowboys defense much more terrible than the Commanders defense has been. Both offenses have been good, but Dallas has been more impressive to me offensively. even without Lamb. Now they get Lamb back. They're at home. And another thing, obviously last year was a different coaching staff for the defense, and they were, they still had Parsons and, some players that they don't have this year. And also Diggs is out this game. He got a concussion in a car accident. So that's, that makes me less confident with the Cowboys in this game. But something last year the Cowboys did defensively really gave the Commanders some issues. The game in Washington, the Dallas defense was kind of dominating, and then the Commanders, found some rhythm. They put up a decent amount of points to make it look like they had a good offensive game. But the Dallas defense really gave the Commanders some issues last year. And then in Dallas, Week 18, the Cowboys, it was against Mariota. It felt like their defense played a solid game, even though the Commanders had a game-winning drive at the end. So I don't know if it was Mike Zimmer cooking something up, who was the Cowboys DC last year. But, yeah, I don't know. And then also, Matt Eberflus last year with the Bears, and obviously he had much more talent than he does with this Cowboys defense. He kind of limited the Commanders' defense in that game, and the Commanders, or their offense that game rather, and their offense at that point in the season was playing better than it is currently. And they're still missing McLaurin. They're still missing some guys. So I think it's going to be an absolute shootout. And at home, I'm just going to trust the Cowboys with Lamb back a bit more. I really think it's going to be a shootout. I would be surprised if it's not at least in the mid to high 20s for both teams points wise. Dallas favored by 1.5, so borderline a pick'em game with the Cowboys being at home. The Commanders, again, they very well could win the game. I'm certainly going to stay away from this game betting wise. I think. Their defense, again, it's not playing too great, but it's definitely playing better than the Cowboys defense. So they can just limit the Cowboys maybe to a field goal and a touchdown, to like 2 drives, force a punt or 2. That could help them win the game greatly. Jane Daniels and company, even though they're missing some guys, the only reason they lost against the Bears was because of turnovers. The Cowboys defense has not been forcing turnovers. So that side to the Commanders, so they just don't turn it over. There's a great chance they win. So Washington very well could win the game, just avoid turnovers. Defense gets a couple key stops, holding to field goals rather than touchdowns. Washington very well could win the game. I think it'll be close either way, whichever team wins. But I thought I would be picking the underdog here, but I'm going to roll with Dallas, get the close dub with Lamb back, big boost for them. Get the close dub, win 33-30 in this divisional matchup. Sunday Night Football, Atlanta and the 49ers. I'm going to roll the 49ers here, and I'm kind of oddly confident, and I shouldn't be because the 49ers are injured beyond belief. I have never seen anything like this year after year where the team just repeatedly gets so many guys injured. I saw Kyle Shanahan at his press conference with the media. He was talking about all the injuries, this guy, he limited participation, they're talking about the injury report. And it took him like 30 seconds to read off the whole injury report. I mean, for Christ's sake, at this point, it's probably quicker for him to just say the guys that are healthy. It is unbelievable how injured this team is. Year after year, it keeps happening. However, they're at home prime time. The 49ers in the Shanahan era, it feels like they really play well in prime time at home and take care of business and win most of their games. And they're going up against the Falcons team coming off a great win against the Bills. But for me, the issue with the Falcons is consistency. They've been inconsistent this year, and now they're going on the road, even though, again, the Niners are injured beyond belief, on the road in San Francisco with the 49ers, even though they're not this year, I wouldn't say they're, like a Super Bowl juggernaut favorite that they've kind of been, the past few years. If it's felt like, maybe not last year, but, Super Bowl contender that's been battle tested, knows how to win big games. I don't know if the Falcons are at that point yet where they can, go on the road in San Francisco, primetime Sunday Night Football, big game feel, and win the game like that. That's a big reason why I'm picking the Niners. And matchup wise, like I said, the Falcons have been extremely inconsistent, and I say it when I talk about the Niners in any game they've been in the season. Robert Saleh, even though that defense is again injured beyond belief, they just lost Fred Warner for the year. He's a fantastic defensive coordinator. I think he has a good game plan in this one that limits Atlanta and Michael Penix and company and Bijan. I don't think the Falcons offense is nothing this game, but I could see them really having a tough time only scoring like 14 to 17, but I think they'll get a bit more than that. The Atlanta defense, again, that's another thing that's been inconsistent. It looks good, then bad. So that's another thing to watch for. I think Atlanta's defense plays a decent game, but I trust Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers offense to execute. Shanahan will have a good game plan ready, I think. I think they'll have a good game plan and execute it well. I just trust them. I trust the Niners offense, even though with all the injuries, more than the Falcons defense, and I trust the 49ers defense more than the Falcons offense, especially when it comes to consistency. And then there's the added factor I mentioned, San Fran at home, prime time. Big game feel. The Falcons really going to win the game. They're that type of a game. So I'm kind of oddly confident with the 49ers. They're favored by 2.5. So I think they'll cover that, but I don't know if I'll bet it. Might stay away from it. If the Falcons do win this game, I think it'll be because their defense really limits the 49ers offense, because I think offensively, I don't think they're going to do too much. If their offense overperforms, Bijan gets going, they move the ball well like they did last week, that they'll probably win the game if they play as well they did last week offensively. But yeah, their defense is going to have to play better than I'm expecting them to. They're just going to have to overperform. Their defense will have to limit the Niners' offense more than I'm expecting it to. And their offense, again, I think it'll kind of have a tough time here. They're going to have to overperform a bit, but it could happen. But I'm kind of oddly confident with the 49ers. So I'm going to roll with them to win the game, take care of business at home in prime time, 24-20. Tampa and Detroit. This is a really tough matchup. I'm surprised that the Lions are favored by 6. As a matter of fact, I'm going to double check I have this line correct here. Let's see. NFL. Yep, they're favored by 6. Now, a large part of that is because the Bucs injury. They've been injured all year, but now they lost Ibuka. They're getting Mike Evans back at least, but besides Mike Evans, Baker's throwing to his like 4th and 5th string and even 6th string receivers. So I think that might finally catch up for the Bucs here. Detroit at home. I feel like they rarely lose 2 in a row since they've kind of become like one of the elite teams in the league under Dan Campbell the past couple of seasons. At home, prime time. I think it's going to be a shootout, and I just trust the Lions offense more against the Bucs offense, simply because a large part because of injuries. If Baker had his full guys, I might pick the Bucs to win this game. But if it's a shootout, I think you have to trust the Lions, especially being at home against the banged-up Bucs offense. And also, Todd Bowles, his defense, even though it's obviously one of the better units every year, Todd Bowles is a really good defensive coordinator. It's absolutely torchable at times, it feels like. So I think it's going to get torched in this game. Although we have seen, we saw last year in Detroit, the Bucs went into Detroit and their offense, or the Bucs defense kind of limited the Lions offense a bit. Even though the Lions, from when I remember that game, just made a bunch of self-inflicted mistakes, some questionable play calling from Ben Johnson. They didn't run enough, things like that. But still, the Bucs defense limited them. But in this game, my gut just tells me it's a shootout. Detroit's offense pretty healthy. The Bucs offense not the case. I think at minimum the Lions, that makes up for an extra stop for the Lions defense with all the injuries. I just think the Bucs defense is a rough showing in this one. That's how Detroit wins. I don't think the Lions defense plays too great of a game, but I could see the Bucs offense struggling, maybe putting up a bit less than this due to all the injuries. I'm kind of confident with the Lions to win the game, but I'm probably staying away from the spread for sure. But I think the Lions will win this game. If it was in Tampa, that'd be a bit tougher. I think I'd slightly lean Lions, but I don't know, honestly. Might pick the Bucs. If Tampa does win the game, again, I only have it being a 4-point game. Maybe their offense puts up a bit more than this, and their defense very well could play better than I'm expecting it to. That'll be a key. If their defense just plays simply better than I'm expecting it to, they hold the Lions to like 21-24. That'd be, a big key for them to win that game, or this game rather. The offense, I just think I don't want to say it's going to struggle, but I think the injuries are going to be more apparent this game for the Bucs than they have been this season. And the Lions in a shootout take advantage of that, win a close one. So, yeah, I think regardless, I could see the Lions winning maybe like 10, 13, something like that at the most. But if Tampa wins, I certainly think it's close. I think it'll be close if Detroit wins. But I'm going to roll the Lions to win this game in a really entertaining shootout, 31-27. And then the second Monday night game, which, again, thank God this is the last time the NFL is doing it. I can't stand when they do 2 Monday night games. And it also starts at 10 on the East Coast time, which I'm going to stay up to watch the game, but it's freaking ridiculous. I work at 6 in the morning, for Christ's sake. I'll be up to like 1 in the morning watching this game. Oh, God. Anyway, it's Houston and Seattle. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. 2 really good defenses. Texans coming off the bye. Seattle's defense has been good all season with the outlier of that Tampa game. They cleaned things up last week against Jacksonville. They're at home, prime time. That crowd's going to be electric. Against the Texans, who their offense has been bad this season, but it's played well the past 2 weeks. Well, the last 2 games. They were on the bye last week. Obviously, the Ravens' defense it's been a disaster this season. They're extremely injured. They put up a 40-plus burger on them. But then we saw the Ravens' defense played pretty solid against the Rams last week, so maybe that 40 burger is a bit more impressive after that showing. They figured something in the fourth quarter out against the Titans, who would still get a solid defense, I would say. So maybe their offense found something. They found the rhythm. They bring it into this game. Their offense, puts up around. If they put up like 24 points, the Texans, I think they get a really good shot to win the game. So I think their defense plays a really good game here, gives them a really realistic chance. I just trust Seattle more at home, prime time. I think overall they're playing better football. I think the Texans offense, the past, the last time we saw them against the Ravens, it was more of I don't want to say an outlier, but just more of an example of the Ravens defense just being abysmal, like it has been for most of this season, rather than the Texans offense being good, figuring some things out that can carry over. I think the Texans offense, this game, it doesn't look as bad as it did the first couple weeks, but I think it looks similar, but a bit more productive, going against, again, a really good Seahawks defense. And again, at home, primetime in Seattle, really beneficial for the Seahawks. I just trust them a bit more here. Again, and the Texans defense is really good too. You can honestly make an argument that it might be the best in football. You can make an argument for, but yeah, I just trust the Seahawks offense to just do a bit more than the Texans in this game. If the Texans do win, again, maybe they put up 24, maybe their defense forces Darnold into a turnover. Like I said, actually, no, I was going to say like I said about another game, and now I'm blanking on what game I was going to mention. Anyway, I think this game is going to be low scoring, so turnovers are going to be crucial. If either team commits a turnover, that's going to really hurt them in the game. So if the Texans, I could see them maybe forcing some turnovers. Maybe they force a Darnold pick, things like that. That could help them win the game. If their offense just puts up like 24, I think there's a really good shot they win the game. But I just trust Seattle's offense to do a bit more than Houston's in this game. Primetime, Monday Night Football, crowd will be electric. I think the Texans offense kind of looks like the Texans offense we're used to this season for the most part, outside of last game. The offense does just enough. If the Texans win, I think it'll be close, within a couple points. If the Seahawks win, I could see them winning maybe like 10-14 at the most, because I think the Texans defense will play a really good game. And they're coming off the bye. That's usually a boost for teams too. But I'm going to roll with Seattle to win 20-17. Should be a low-scoring, entertaining, good defensive game. Looking forward to seeing how this one plays out. I probably would take the spread for the Seahawks as well. They're favored by 3. I'll probably take that. Okay, let me make sure I got all the games here. Yep, all right, I got all the games. All right, so yeah, that'll pretty much do it for this video. Uh, Looks like a pretty good slate of games this week. The Thursday game was fantastic. You know, the Unk Bowl, as I mentioned at the start of the video. I started off 0-1 with my picks the past 2 weeks because I got the past two Thursday games wrong. So it's good to start off 1-0, much better than 0-1. So last week I had, what did I do? I think I had one of my better pick weeks of the year. This overall for picks this year, it's been a disaster. Well, not a disaster, but it's been not good. The past 2 years, I haven't done nearly as well as I have in prior years. But at least last week, I did pretty solid. Hopefully, I can build off that. Starting off 1-0 helps. But yeah, looks like a good slate of games this week. Yeah, as I always say in these types of videos, good luck fantasy, betting wise, pick wise, all that good stuff. I'll wrap the video up here. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the week of football and take it easy, guys.